All right, friends, I want to talk about the difference between manifesting from a position of having a difficult childhood or difficult upbringing and manifesting from privilege. I know many people don't think this way, but I've noticed a big difference in our spiritual techniques when we are manifesting from a point of having dealt with a lot of trauma in our backgrounds or really difficult emotional experiences and lacking real stability and real intimacy. And I think there's a really big difference on how people with backgrounds or history in trauma or abuse manifest spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and physically versus those who have come from a little bit more privilege. And I'm not saying this to be like a pain in the butt. It's more of a really stable understanding that there is a difference depending on how you grew up, what trauma you've experienced in your life dictates how you need to pursue and perceive manifesting and creating your reality. If you do have a strong history of trauma or a lot of difficulty in your childhood and upbringing, you're going to need to take on a very different approach to spiritually manifest your life and your dreams and create it into reality than someone who came from what I would call privilege, but it's really just a little bit more of a stable upbringing or a stable life or something where their needs were more availably met regularly. Okay, so what brought this whole topic up to the surface? Here's what's happened over the last 15, 20-ish years that I've been working on this content, that I've been working on my personal development and really creating myself into the version of myself that I wanted to become. I thought that there was something wrong with me. I was like, why am I working slower than everyone else? Why is this taking so much longer? Why do when I manifest things, they have trouble sticking or staying? Why do I feel like I have to work so much harder than everyone else I know to create a beautiful life? So those of you that think that maybe you're slow, maybe you're a late bloomer, maybe there's something wrong with you, there is nothing wrong with you. Okay, probably you're just approaching manifestation and creating your vision and reality from the position of privilege when really you need to create it from the position of being trauma-informed. The truth is, when you have a history of deep trauma or deep challenge in your background, there is a lower challenge, a lower trough, and a lower valley than where other people are starting. So you're actually starting the race a little bit behind where people that were privileged or that had more access to more emotional or physical resource were starting off their manifestations from. So I mean, ultimately, I gotta be honest, I thought there was something wrong with me. I was like, why does it take me so much longer to manifest anything I want than so many other people I either know or have heard about? And then I started really understanding manifestation from the position of being trauma-informed. Like, if you have significant abuse or a traumatic childhood or a number of significant traumatic events in your life that you are moving through, what those traumatic events do is they create a deficit in your ability to manifest spiritually and emotionally. So what we have to do is just acknowledge that deficit, come into self-awareness, self-acceptance, and understand what it takes to manifest when you are a person who has experienced some pretty significant adversity in their life, which is not going to be your typical create a cute vision board, chant mantras, woo, dance around in a fire circle, burn your intentions in the middle of the night with other witches, and assume it's going to be all great. You're probably wondering, why are the manifestation practices not working as well for me? Because, sweetheart, when you have dealt with significant adversity, it challenges your relationship with Source. It challenges your relationship with trust, with intimacy, with provision, with receiving, and with understanding how to rely on your surroundings, what to rely upon, where you get your guidance, and ultimately what's really safe for you to trust. What can you trust? So the truth is, the way that you manifest and create your reality can be different depending on what sort of struggles you grew up with. If you had a history of violence or abuse, if you have a history of emotional neglect or really, really strong abandonment wounds, you can't really approach manifestation the same way as someone that has a more stable upbringing or that had a more stable life or that had really stable partnership and stable resource available to them in one way or another. And I'm not saying that people didn't have their share of adversity. I'm saying that some of us get a much larger share of adversity than others. And when you've dealt with a significant amount of trauma in your life and you're navigating manifestation without being trauma informed, it creates this feedback loop of shame, of I'm not enough, of I'm not blooming fast enough, of why am I not doing it right? Is there something wrong with me? Have I just not figured this out? Am I not smart enough? Am I not intelligent? Am I not pretty enough to make this? To really work with the universe in a way where this should be easy. I've heard manifestation is easy. Why isn't it easy for me? I have a secret for you. If you've dealt with trauma in your background, it's not easy because you have to understand how to incorporate what it is to build trust in a different way than other people. This is what I call being trauma-informed in manifestation work. And I don't think anyone covers it. So I'm here to chat it up with you guys because I've had to work it through for myself. If you do have a history of adverse life experience and it goes deep and it caused some really deep wounding patterns, those wounding patterns can be re-triggered with traditional manifesting techniques. Because when you are manifesting a new life or a better life, it requires a very good relationship with Source. It requires a great relationship with yourself. It requires trust and, dare I say, faith. And any of you who have worked with me one-on-one or have been following me for a while know that my relationship with God is very, very strong and is simultaneously very tested. Like, I am a very, very testy human. So when my higher self asks me to do things, I grill my higher self, I grill my guides, and I say, I need you to provide me with a strategy where it would make sense for me to trust you. I need you to help me build evidence that trust in the universe is a good strategy. Now, that might seem crazy to someone who has not had as many adverse experiences or that had a more emotionally stable upbringing. But for those of you that are like me, I'm coming from a trauma-informed background with everything that I've had to work through personally. We're going to be looking at the category of people that would say they have pretty severe neglect wounds, pretty severe abandonment wounds. The wounds that just keep opening and just kind of never stop. And the truth is that a lot of manifestation communities, tactics, spiritual practitioners that even I've worked with in the past, don't approach manifestation from understanding what it is to have a background in understanding trauma and how you build trust with people who have received a significant amount of trauma, abuse, neglect, and abandonment. People that have received those aspects of life over and over and over again have way too much evidence in their survival ability to not trust than they have in their evidence to trust. When that is the truth, it makes it really hard to use blind trust and faith in the universe to receive what you want. You know, whether you're visualizing, meditating, you might be doing everything, honestly, and you might be wondering, like, why is this not working? Well, if you come from a traumatic background, and that's not to say you're not doing your healing work either. I know so many of you are in therapy and doing this work. It's that when you're approaching manifestation and you have a background that's been really, really difficult, you have to approach it differently. All right, so you're like, tell me, Stormy, what the hell am I supposed to do? I want to manifest the best life of my dreams. How do we go about doing that? So I got my little list here, okay? If you've dealt with a lot of abuse in your upbringing or have some pretty severe wounding patterns emotionally, it's a little harder to attract and keep things when you manifest them into your reality. So there are different ways of building trust, both trust in self-trust, and the evidence that trusting your higher self, trusting intuitive guidance is an appropriate strategy for you and makes sense, and trusting other people. And all of those different aspects need to be handled kind of individually. So you have to develop trust in self, trust in your higher power, whatever that means for you, whether it's God, whether it's some cute little teddy bear up in the sky, whether it's the sun, wherever you source your ability to say, there is something else working beyond me in this universe that is helping to carry me to safety. You need to develop a historical evidence that trust is a good strategy with Source. And then you also need to create a strategy where trusting humans can be a good strategy as well. Now, for those of us who have gone through a lot of shit in our past, trusting humans is hard. So how do I handle that with all of my clients, and why my methodology with how I work with people is so inherently emotionally safe is because I say, don't trust the humans. Don't worry about it. Trust yourself. What does your gut say? What does your primal instinct say? The key here is that you have survived and thrived to some level or another, which some people say you're either thriving or surviving. I think surviving is thriving. I think we should celebrate that survival. And if you have survived thus far, it means that you understand your own primal instinct and you know what to trust within yourself, what makes sense and what doesn't, based on common sense and street smarts. Now, the beauty here and why I'm covering this is that common sense and street smarts are not common for spiritual manifestation. They are not common for spiritual practitioners to talk about. Because this is grounded, real-world human shit. It's less about having your head in the clouds and manifesting and thinking and pondering and contemplating, and it's more about trusting your survival instincts on the ground. And if you can trust your survival instincts on the ground, then you can manifest from that place. But it is very, very different than where you'll experience most people on YouTube talking about manifestation. So what's probably different about what I'm going to tell you is I'm going to tell you to trust your human. I'm going to tell you to trust your primal instinct, your primal body. I'm going to encourage you to trust your instinct. It is the very thing that most spiritual people shy away from because instinct can be a little scary. Instinct can be primal. It can be off-grid. It can be sexual. It can be aggressive. And those are things that most spiritual people shy away from because they're bypassing the experience, not because they're bad humans, but because they likely either A, don't have significant trauma in their upbringings, or B, they don't know how to deal with that trauma, so they use spirituality as a way of escaping their trauma and creating a reality above the ground where they don't have to deal with real human shit. I don't have any judgment for it. I'm just showing you the difference. All right, so you're probably wondering the difference, like, what do I trust? How do I know what to trust, Stormy? I need the way through, okay? Well, hey, listen to me. I got you. All right, when we are trauma-informed and working on our manifestations and creating our best life from scratch, okay? From scratch, here's how you got to think about manifestation. You have to build trust. You have to build security and safety and understand what security and safety feels like. Anyone who has dealt with any level of trauma in their background tends to have a lot of difficulty in knowing what security and safety feels like emotionally and physically with stability. So what we keep doing is rehearsing experiences that we don't want to call into our lives. And then we think we're really bad at manifesting, but the truth is you have no experience with what it is to have a safe and reliable experience. Physically, emotionally, mentally, even spiritually. So what we do is we continue to create on autopilot the same sorts of experiences, and we think we're really bad at this work, when the reality is we just don't understand what security and safety feels like. So what you have to do is start to explore safety. What does safety feel like in my body? And I gotta be honest, when you're exploring safety, it means you're exploring a lot of situations that don't feel safe. Okay, I will not beat around the bush here. When we're understanding discernment, the universe has to throw you in many different situations so that you can learn, so that you can take on the perspective of being able to discern the subtle gray matter in between polarities, in between a black and white experience, in between what feels safe and what doesn't feel safe, and then be able to consciously choose the safer feeling experience based on your primal preference in the moment. The next thing we need to focus on is evidence. If you want to build a really good life and trust your decisions and trust your spiritual awareness, you have to build evidence that safety is real, it is common for you, you can relax into it, and you have to build evidence that trusting is a safe strategy for you. All right. So how do you build evidence? You roll up your sleeves. You go throw yourself into many different situations. You trust God, you trust Source, you trust your higher self. You pray before all these situations. You pray and set intentions that everything goes the way that it needs to, smoothly, for you to learn what you need to learn. What I find with so many people is that we think we're not doing things right when the universe hits us curveballs or anything that is anything less than like a perfect experience. When the reality is, if there was a perfect experience, you'd be bored in 2 seconds. Okay, when was the last movie that you watched with a healthy couple and a healthy relationship that you would sit and watch for 3 hours? Zero, you guys. They would never sell. Okay? The movies that sell, the TV shows that sell are the ones with conflict because conflict is interesting, all right? Challenge is interesting. So the universe is going to challenge you and place you in interesting situations for you to make choices. And the key of your knowing is that if it's anything less than perfect, it doesn't mean you're bad at any of this. It actually just means that you're human and that you probably should practice more acceptance, more self-acceptance. There's a really big idea in spiritual communities, online and everything, where bypassing spiritually is a good idea. A good idea. I don't think it's a great idea. I think there's a lot of escapism in spirituality. I know, because I've done it. I've been there. Okay. I'm just speaking from an honest place. And then the next thing that's really important for us to cultivate when we have a background of trauma is interdependence. So what I find in so many people that have challenging, really adverse backgrounds and what they've lived through in real life is that they come to depend on the wrong people. They depend on people who abuse them, and then they create a cycle of expecting abuse and producing self-abuse internally to show that that was like just to reflect the internal and external. We're constantly mirror reflecting our realities, and it ends up just being a tennis match of abuse. What you need to do if you have experienced significant trauma, especially in relationships in the past, is you need to cultivate interdependence. I would love to say it's independence, but the truth is it's interdependence. Because if any of you are like me, you've struggled with hyper independence, which is a trauma response. Now, it's a beautiful survival skill where the key of the healing is, and being able to jump into our manifestations and create on demand, is realizing that we do have to rely on humans, and that independence to the point where it becomes a fault is hyper independence and is no longer great, because you're just carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders when you could ask someone for help. And that reliability is part of being human, and that's part of the vulnerability of being willing to ask for your needs. Now, your needs aren't always going to be met, sweetheart, and that's going to be okay too. The point is that we have to continue to go on the adventure, to be willing to live life, to be willing to risk ourselves in ways that might feel unsafe but are actually truly unsafe, because our nervous system and our psychological development and the neural pathways are not expanded and grown until we are outside of our comfort zone. And your comfort zone probably isn't even helping you a lot of the time, you know? Your comfort zone is just keeping things familiar. And I'm not saying to go traumatize yourself and sprint outside of your comfort zone, but I am saying that if you're steadily outside of your comfort zone, that you're going to create a certain amount of pressure, and the universe will create this pressure on you in the form of curveballs, in the form of challenging experiences, even the ones that you think you're not doing a great job at manifesting good things. You are. The universe is placing those experiences as obstacles in front of your path so that you can clear the way, so that you can clear the obstacles and actually see what has been holding you back contextually in the form of literal limitation, so that you can challenge who you think you are, how you perceive, and create new choices in the moment, which is resolving your karma, which is changing who you are in the core of your character in a way that you were likely unavailable to do when you were growing up, and that you needed to employ different survival skills. The beauty about being an adult and doing this manifestation work is rolling your sleeves up, getting yourself in the dirt and saying, I'm willing to live the good life, which means I'm willing to tackle everything that comes in front of me today on the way to me getting to the good life, not swatting them away, not telling myself that I don't have a good judge of character, or that I'm slow, or I'm not meant for this good life, but actually just staring everything dead in the face and saying, I'm human. This is what I came here for. I came here to learn. And if I came from a more difficult upbringing than other people, and I have less coping mechanisms available to hide my trauma, then I have to be willing to be more vulnerable in my growth. And even saying that makes me want to cry, because I think there are so many of you that are hyper creative and amazing people that have had a lot of trauma in your backgrounds, and you think there's something wrong with you for not being able to fit into society, to be able to shove the emotions into a box while you show up for your 9-to-5 job and just get on with it, where you feel like you can't get the right relationships to stick, and you don't understand why you keep manifesting relationships that trigger abuse and abandonment. It's like, well, because you got to slow down. You got stuff in your background that requires you to slow down and reacclimate, retrain yourself for the childhood that you didn't have. And I don't know anything actually more challenging. I have been raising my inner child for the last several years as the wonderful mother version of me and the wonderful father version of me. And I can say it is very effective. And that's where a lot of my strategy has come from, in being trauma informed. Anyway, you guys, all right, it's getting dark, but here's the scoop. There is nothing wrong with you. If you have trouble manifesting, if you feel like you're a late bloomer, probably you need to slow down your process and retrain your inner child to find new ways to trust yourself, to trust your relationship to source, and look for evidence from it. Nobody needs to be trusting with blind faith. If you have a background in trauma, blind faith is a terrible strategy. I am not going to lie. It just creates a lot of risk that's not always rewarded. It's a very like 50-50 split. But anyway, you just got to be a little bit more patient with your manifestation process. Be a little more patient with your self-acceptance. Stop the shame cycle. No more shaming yourself for doing what is normal, for being human. Okay, end of PSA. I love you guys so much. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, subscribe. I'd love to hear from you. Tap the bell for notifications. And if you love me, I'd love for you to check out my programs, all the different ways you can work with me. I have workshops, meditation albums. I will leave all of the links in the description below. That's what I got for you guys. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, I adore you, I love you, and I will see you all soon.